If you see one in the sky, if you see one manifest before your very eyes, if you see a strange creature lurking outside, then tell it on accounts of the paranormal. Hear it on accounts of the paranormal. Welcome to accounts of the paranormal.
Welcome to the show. Tonight, I reach across the pond to England to speak with paranormal researcher Paul Howard, discussing his more than 20 years in the paranormal, studying parapsychology at Royal Holloway University, and leading numerous investigations, from the historic tunnels at Holloway to the prison cells of Fort Brockhurst. Tonight, Paul shares some of his experiences with the ghosts of England. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm happy to have you. Thank you for being here. My first overseas guest from the amazing country, the United Kingdom. You're just outside of London. How awesome is that? I'm happy to have you here. So thanks for coming on. About 25 years in the paranormal. You are the founder of Hosts for Ghosts Paranormal there. You studied parapsychology at Royal Holloway University. You're a member of New England Society of Paranormal Research. You have done numerous investigations. You've seen an apparition. You actually caught one on camera that was featured on Unexplained, caught on camera. How cool is that? I can't wait to hear about all of that. And you recently investigated Fort Brockhurst as a charity event, which is wonderful, with all the monies raised going to the English Heritage, which I believe now owns the Fort Brockhurst. So that is really cool. And I can't wait to dig in and hear all about that. And what I like to do with the guests is take me back to when this all started for you, the paranormal. Was there any particular event that launched your interest in the paranormal? What actually got you started? If you could just go back and take it from there.
Yeah, of course. It was probably about 20 years ago, I suppose. Now, time's gradually going on. So I was asleep one night, and I was obviously fast asleep. It was about 2:30, 2:45 in the morning, and I suddenly had a feeling that someone was in the room. So I suddenly sat up, bolt upright, thinking someone had broken into the house. But as I sat upright, I saw my nan, who'd passed literally 10 years before. It must have been around 10 years she'd passed over. And I saw her standing at the bottom of the bed. So I thought, well, I must be dreaming. So I sort of had another look and she was gone. So I laid back down, went to sleep. Sort of didn't think much of it through the day. Thought, well, that was a very strange thing to see because she'd passed over 10 years prior to that. So I went to bed the following night, and then again around about 3:15 this time, because I managed to look at the clock, and I had the same feeling in my body that someone was watching me. So, and my ex-wife then was fast asleep. I suddenly sat upright, and she was there again at the end of the bed, just looking at me, as I remember her, with her grey hair, small glasses, and like a cooking pinny, like a pinny that she used to wear for cooking cakes and stuff. And I thought, well, it can't be 2 nights in a row. What's going on? So I eventually went back off to sleep. She disappeared within seconds again. So the third night came, same thing again. And I couldn't actually see, I could see her mouth moving, but I couldn't actually hear or see what she was actually saying. And again, it was about 3:10, 3:15 in the early hours of the morning here. So on the fourth night, I thought, I'm going to try and catch what she's saying. She's obviously saying something to me, a warning or something or other. And then sure enough, about 3:25 in the morning, I had that strange feeling someone was watching me again. So I suddenly woke up, sat upright in the bed, and there she was, sure enough, still at the end of the bed, with her curly hair, just as I remember her as a boy when she was alive. And as I sat up, I sort of tried to get closer so I could see her mouth moving. And as I got closer, she just disappeared. But I know she was trying to say something to me. So after that, I never saw her again. And then I sort of questioned what I'd seen. Why did I see her? How could I have seen her? And then I did wonder if I had a gift as a child, but never really used it as in a psychic gift. So I sort of mulled over it for weeks, really. And then I asked myself the question that everybody asks themselves, is there life after death? This is the question that we're looking for in the paranormal world. Can we prove it? Will I live long enough to prove it? I don't know. But some of the things that have happened to me in the paranormal world definitely sways me to thinking there definitely is life after death. And then shortly after that, I went on a university course for parapsychology, and I was a mature student, so I was a working dad then. So what I had to do was to do it after work and weekends as a mature student, as we call it here. So you're an adult learning, and was part of a class, but the class were learning all week. But there was myself and another guy that were sort of learning after work and weekends and all of this. And it took the main group 3 years to qualify, and it took myself and this other guy 3.5 years to qualify. When I finally passed it with a distinction, and then coming out of there, it sort of opened my eyes not only to the paranormal but to the supernatural, because we have various people, guest speakers talking about time travel and time slips, and you know encounters that people had during the Second World War. What they saw at the end of after a bombing on the street, and it was just really spiked my intrigue into finding out more. So as I got a distinction and left there, I joined the Ghost Club of Great Britain, which was started by the very famous Arthur Conan Doyle, where they get very exclusive venues like Hampton Court and various places like that. So you have to be part of that to get in there. So I did that for a little while, and then gradually worked my way away from there and joined a local group where we started to do lots more investigations, sort of more, I would say, sort of down to earth investigations, grassroots investigate houses. And then we picked up a contract for the Ministry of Defence to do a few of their buildings scattered around a place here in the UK called Aldershot, which is a big army base. And they had a few buildings there they wanted us to investigate. So we looked into that and we did that. And really, I've gone on from there I have my own team now, obviously Host for Ghosts, with my partner, Jenny, who's a psychic medium. Obviously, she picks up and spirit artist, so she can draw spirit when we're in a location, which is brilliant because we can put a face to a name a lot of the times that we're investigating. Oh, we've done private houses. We did one house, took us 9 months to get to the bottom of the haunting. So I've had various experiences in all. I've done asylums, I've done hospitals, private houses, Ministry of Defence places, you name it. I've done it. That's just a small insight.
Yeah, no, and there's a lot to unpack there. Boy, that's a lot. So going back real quick to that, the sighting of your nan 20 years ago or so, that's interesting. Several nights in a row. How did, just real quick to touch on that, how did she appear to look to you? Did she look, was it like a person? Was she whole? Was it apparition-like, transparent? But how did she look?
She was an apparition. She was like solid, because I remember seeing her glasses and the way she was dressed. I always remember as a child how she would dress when we go over there, and she had the little dress on and her round glasses and her short grey hair. I couldn't see through her, but I knew that she was different. Do you understand what I mean? Which would have been a human standing there. I knew she was not human because it was different. It was a different energy I could feel in the room, and I looked at her and I thought, I must be dreaming. Why am I thinking about her? Is it coming up to an anniversary of her passing? And she died on the Queen's Silver Jubilee. So we'd already gone past that sort of time. So I'm thinking, why is she here? And then I think she came back to tell me that I had a gift and I needed to use it. Because I think at that time I wasn't tuned into spirit. So I couldn't hear the message that she was trying to give to me. but I couldn't get close enough to her to see what she was saying, sort of lip read. But as I sort of look back now, I think she came to tell me that I had a gift. That as a child, my mum and dad weren't very spiritual, to be honest. They say no, dead people are dead, and that's the end of it. You carry on with your life. And I think she came back to say to me that I did have a gift, and that sort of when I did sort of realise maybe what I saw as a child or had the experience as a child, maybe that's right, and hence why I sort of then intrigued me to look for that the question that we all want to know: is there life after death?
When she appeared, when you woke, was there any other senses? Did you feel cold? Was there any scents, smells? Was there anything else associated with the appearance, or was it strictly the appearance of her?
I noticed on the first night it was just literally the appearance as she was standing there. But obviously I could only, over the headboard, I can only see a very small, like the top half of her. But as the time went on, I always remember, like the third night, smelling her perfume, which was like lavender. She would wear lavender, and I remember getting the smell of lavender with her. And I thought that truly is Nan, as I called her then, because I could smell her. I wasn't afraid. It didn't frighten me. It's in the spec that someone was standing there. I think she wasn't there to frighten me, and she was there to give me a message. But it was the smell. I always remember the lavender perfume that she would wear.
About how old were you when this happened?
I would have been 26-ish, 27, maybe a little bit older.
And this was in your home. Was there any
Correct.
other type of paranormal activity within the home at any time, or was it just solely the appearance of her?
No, we'd never had anything in the house. You know, it was just solely her visiting us from the spirit. There was nothing else in the house. The house wasn't haunted, where we lived, because obviously we didn't live where we are now, because obviously now we live in a haunted house. But in them times, the house was never haunted. We had no inclination of anything would happen. She'd passed over and gone, and I was very close to my nan as a boy, and I was the only boy in the family, so I was very close to her and my grandfather, who was a mechanic like myself. So no, the house wasn't haunted. It was just the appearance of her 4 nights on a row. Why it was 4 nights, I don't know. Whether it's like that I couldn't get what she was trying to say to me in the first 3 nights, I don't know. But I knew then there was something she wanted me to do, with the feeling, the sense. It wasn't cold. I just remember it being just chilly, like a normal night. If you wake up in the early hours of the morning, especially in the UK, it was just like a normal chilly night in the house. Nothing I would think, cool, why is it so cold in here? It was just a normal chilly night.
And before this took place, had you experienced anything related to the paranormal at any level? Hear anything, sights, sounds, sense?
I used to hear voices. I know it sounds probably mad, but as a child, I remember hearing voices, and in my bedroom as a young child, in my 10, 11, 12 year old, I'd be sitting in there, and I would hear people, and I thought I had heard my granddad call me one day, and I said to my mum, "Granddad's just called me." She said, "No, don't be daft. Granddad's passed over. He's gone. You couldn't have heard him." I said, "But I heard him call my name, and I recognised his voice because he had a bit of an accent, so I recognised it." She said, "No. When people are dead, they're dead. That's it. They're gone. You can't have here. You must be doing something or whatever." But and my mum and dad weren't very much of a believer in the spiritual world, and I heard voices, never really saw anything, but I knew people were around me, as mad as that sounds. But the voices, I remember hearing the voices. But over a period of time, I think I put the gift on the back shelf and then sort of went away because I was told, they passed over and they never come back. And no, of course, he wouldn't contact you. Why would he want to contact you? And then gradually, as a child, I was sort of put my gift, for want of a word, sort of put it on the back shelf, really. So I didn't use it for, probably another 10, 15 years after that.
Yeah, and I think as you mentioned, I think your Nana was there to kind of nudge you and remind you or bring it to your attention, as well as watching over you. That's really interesting.
I think she wanted to give me a message, but I wasn't tuned in to spirit then. Obviously, having worked with my partner, and she's really got me connected with spirit now. But I think in that time she came back to just remind me that I did have a gift and that I needed to learn how to use it and then be able to tune in. But I've never seen her since, so I don't know quite what the message was. Or I've tried contacting her and my grandfather, but you don't always get your family come through anyway. But they've never come back, so
Maybe the message was received. Whatever she was trying to get to you, I think you received that message, and it probably she didn't
yeah,
need to say anything. I mean, 4 nights in a row, that's a lot. She kept coming back night after night until she felt you received that message. That's amazing. That's actually kind of wonderful.
yeah. I look back on it now, and I'm very grateful to her because she's obviously reminding me that I had a gift and I just needed to know how to use it. And because as being a young child, your parents are not really, well, my parents weren't into the spiritual world at all. So I think she's come back to remind me, you do have a gift and you need to learn how to use it again.
That was great for her to do that. What a great experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What was the next experience for you? Where did it go from there after that point? Because that seemed to be, or definitely would have been a catalyst into the paranormal after that. What was next?
After that, I sort of waited for a while and just thought about what I'd seen and tried to work out. And I'm thinking, is she trying to tell me something? Could this mean there is life after death? Is that the question that I'm looking for? Maybe I had that question buried deep in my mind somewhere, and she just come back to remind me of what I've been thinking about. So from there, I saw the parapsychology course come up at the university, and I thought, you know what, maybe that'll open my eyes wider because the paranormal is a very small part of the supernatural circle. We have UFOs, cryptids, all sorts of things in the paranormal world. It's all part of that supernatural. And I thought, if I can learn more about paranormal, supernatural world, I think that would open my eyes to a lot more experience, and which it did. It taught me. It showed me there. It's not just looking for spirits and ghosts. It's looking for other stuff, UFOs, all the stuff that we just sort of put to one side and don't think about. But it all makes that massive circle of the supernatural. And I was just intrigued to learn about the supernatural and what went with it and what part the paranormal played in the supernatural, albeit a small part in it, like the UFOs and uh, all the other stuff that's in it, time travel and all that sort of stuff. And I think that sort of spurred me on to think, do you know what? I need to know more. And I needed to learn more. I carried on absorbing everything for 3.5 years, guest speakers. We were doing different types of investigation within the college, and I'm sure I saw people there in the dark, in the distance. But really, I was with a group that weren't they were studying as part of parapsychology, but they were doing a bigger um, lecture. So this was a small part of what they had to learn. And I didn't like to say anything when we were in the rooms and saw people in the dark. And I just thought I kept it sort of to myself, thinking they think, oh man, if I'm saying I can see people at the end of the hallway, and we did a little investigation within the college or the university as it is now. It's this very haunted part of Egham in Surrey, and I and that sort of and then I started to realise maybe this is what she wanted me to do. Maybe this is the road that Spirit have laid for me and take me on the journey into the paranormal, and then I pursued it from there on.
Yeah, that's real interesting. You mentioned, and earlier you had mentioned time travel. So I'm definitely going to want to
Yeah,
dig into that a little. That is just kind of a fascinating thing. But while you were studying for those 3.5
yeah.
years, was there any standout moments while you were studying, maybe while you were out and doing any research or anything? Does anything stand out that
Yeah.
it kind of like told you, yeah,
What?
this is what it's all about?
So they said what we'll do one night is that we'll go to the main, because we were in a smaller building of the university in the grounds. So they said what we'll do is we'll get a ghost hunt together, or spirit. I don't really like to call it a ghost hunt, because a hunt means there's something dies at the end. I like to call it an investigation. People say, hey, let's go on a ghost hunt. It's not about hunting to me. It's about finding out. Anyway, so I decided to finish work early because I really wanted to go on this investigation at the Holloway University. It was known as the college then, but it's the university now. So we all met up, and then she said, "What we'll do, there's three different sites we're going to go to. Was the boiler room, the clock tower, and the gardens around the university, because the Royal Holloway University was built by a guy called George Holloway, who built it on the top of Egham Hill for his wife. And what they used to do was take the unfortunate ladies of the night from London during the Victorian times and earlier, and train them to be servants, so they would have some sort of decent life, serving, the hierarchy in London and all over the country. So they took these women in, trained them, and gave them a roof over their head, and then eventually his wife started to get dementia and a few bits. So at the bottom of the hill, the college was at the top. At the bottom of the hill was a sanatorium that he built for his wife. So when she started to lose her mind, he could keep her out of sight. So what they did was, from the college at the top, they built tunnels under the ground to the sanatorium at the bottom of the hill. So people with the disabilities of being mentally ill, whatever they could have been out of London, were taken down the tunnels and never walked along the road or along the forest. So anyway, so bear that in mind. So she said, what we'll do, we'll go to the tunnels first. And bear in mind, these tunnels run for about a mile down, but you don't actually realise you're actually going down, because when you're in the dark, you don't realise you're actually walking down. So we're in a group, and like there was probably 2 or 3 men and 8 women. So she said, we'll have the tour guide was at the front, the lady that was doing the investigation. Said, we'll go down the tunnel, and then we'll go about halfway, and then we'll turn around and come back, and we'll do a bit of calling out. So we ended up going down the tunnels. So we did a bit of calling out, and we could hear like footsteps and laughing. It was really intriguing, although the tunnels were over a mile long, but you knew with the torches that there was nobody else in the tunnel other than us. And obviously we were a tight group. So, because you couldn't get lost in there, because it was so dark, you didn't know which way was out and which way was down. So you had to really be concentrated on what you were doing. So anyway, we turned round, and I became the last one out of the tunnel on the back of the group. So we're walking for about 10 minutes, and then I thought I heard something running behind me. And I sort of turned around in the dark, looked as the group carried on, and I could hear what sounded like someone running up and then like sort of sliding along the dirt on their shoes. And I thought, well, that's really odd. And I looked and I carried on walking, and the group had got a little bit forward of me, probably 100 yards in front of me. So I was a little bit way back, so I could see them. So I knew I was heading out of the tunnel the right. And again, I heard this running and this like sliding on the dirt. And I thought, well, that's really odd. So I sort of speeded up my walk a little bit to try and catch up with the main group like you do. And then I felt a tug on my shirt, like my tail on my shirt. And I thought, I got myself caught up on something. So I've turned around, and I'm not caught up on anything. There's nothing there to catch your shirt or jacket on. So I carried on, and I could feel this tugging on my shirt, not trying to hold me back, but like someone was holding on to me coming out. And I thought, this is really odd. So anyway, we sort of walked. I caught up in the main group, and it was still there. And as we came out, it sort of went. And I looked behind me, and the lady that was in charge of the tour said to me, what are you looking at? And I told her what had happened. I said, it's really odd. It's like someone was running up behind me and skidding on the dirt, but held onto my back of my jacket at the bottom by my waist. And she said, well, that makes sense, because during the Second World War, when the Germans were bombing around Egham and all around that area. They used to take the children down the tunnels to keep them safe from bombing. And what they used to do is make them hold each other's jacket around the waist, sort of at the back, what we call the tail part, top and tail. So everybody would hold each other going down there so nobody would get lost. And they would hold each other's shirt tails coming out so nobody would be left behind. And she said, what you're feeling is one of the children holding onto your shirt tail. And that's what I felt. Not tugging me back, but something just coming with me out of the tunnel.
That is amazing. Yeah, when you first mentioned something was tugging on the shirt, I immediately thought like of a kid, because that's something like a child might do, grab the bottom of the tail of your shirt and kind of hold on to you. Wow, what an amazing experience that was.
Very much. And, I never forget it to this day because, I'm quite touched that a child I would, came with me and came out. I don't know whether they were lost in the tunnel or they were just letting me know that they were there, but it was quite an experience to have that. I felt quite honoured that they would trust me by touching me like that.
Absolutely. Were there any recordings, any EVPs caught any voices by chance while you were in those tunnels?
The lady that was running the tour, she had an EVP, and you could hear children laughing and like a conversation very much in the tunnel, like an echo. But the tunnel led to the sanatorium, but the sanatorium had been closed for 50, 60 years. So we knew there was nobody down there talking up the tunnel. So when she played it back when we went for tea, sort of had a little bit of a break, and people were talking to me about my experience. Wasn't I scared being the last one out? But I wasn't scared. I was intrigued. And then she said, "Well, let's have a listen back," and played it back, and you could hear what sounded a really soft girl's talk. It was like a hello and I'm here, I'm here, and then a conversation a bit further down the tunnel that you could hear the echo, but you couldn't really pick up. It was muffled, for once to say the word. You couldn't quite make out what the conversation was, but you could hear people having a conversation. Not sure if it's adult, but you could hear the little girl's voice saying, I'm here," which was, I think, and I relate that to the little girl that was tugging on my shirt. I couldn't hear her, but the voice would have caught her.
And what happened next?
We went to what they had is the old boiler room there. So in the boiler room, she didn't tell us. She said, we'll go in the room and we'll have a Ouija board in the room. You can do the Ouija board if you like. If you're not happy to do it, that's perfectly fine. You're not forced to do anything you don't want to do. So, and I'm standing behind watching the Ouija board work and thinking, I really want to go at this, but is it safe? I've heard bad stories about Ouija boards, and I'm thinking, is it safe? Should I really touch it? Could I take something home with me? And I sort of said to her, is this perfectly safe? Is it okay? She said, yeah, you got to experience it. We're all grounded, we're all safely protected here. Nothing's going to follow you home, nothing can harm you on the board. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to have a go because I just wanted to experience it to say that I'd done it. And it was a different level of movement. I expected the glass to drag across the board, but it sort of moved so smoothly along the board. And that's what sort of blew my mind. I'm thinking, how can it move so smoothly with everybody's fingers on it? Why is it not screeching along the top? Anyway, we were asking out, and we had a man. We spelt man name out George, and then there was a Michael. So it was two men's name. And we were saying, did you die here? And he went straight to yes. Was it an accident? Yes. So we had lots of communication with them. Can you knock somewhere in the room? There's a big room. It's like a massive old-shaped boiler room, and it was run on steam, so it was really old-fashioned. But they hadn't moved the boilers. They were just everything was original, so it was loads of energy in there. So there was a tap and a knock and a bang on the boiler. There was all sorts of things went off. It was absolutely brilliant. And when we came out, she said, "Right, I'll sit you down. I'll tell you." George and Michael were two workers in there working away when one of the boilers blew up and killed them, and they've never left since. And they're who we had communication with. That would just sort of blew my mind. They came through on the board, and they actually made noises. They actually responded. Can you not once for yes, twice for no? That type of conversation. It was just so intriguing, and I'm a bit like a sponge. I want to know more. I want to know more. What's going on? And when she told us, I thought, well, that is incredible, absolutely incredible contact.
When did those men, when did they pass? Do you know about the timeline?
I think it was about 1718, 1790, something like that. It had just gone over to steam boiler for the heating to run it, as it was a college there, obviously for teaching women to serve and do that. And they'd just literally gone over to steam, as far as I understood from the story. And because they hadn't had much experience with steam by then, one of the boilers exploded, and obviously these two guys, bless them, they were killed inside the boiler room. So it would have been around the 1800s, probably, around that time. But it was original.
Were you doing the board yourself solely, or was there anyone else working that board with you?
5 of us on the glass. 5. And I was sort of watching everybody's fingers, seeing, being my first time on it, is someone moving it? Are they pushing it? How you sort of try and work out what's going on. How can they communicate through a glass that's not dragging on top? Of course, I was looking at people's fingers, see if someone was moving it, and I couldn't see any fingertips being white where someone was pushing it. So I was intrigued, shall I say, what was going, how that glass was moving.
What were your feelings about that afterwards? Has that become something that you use, or was it just at that time?
No, we do use it now. I did a lot of studying on Ouija boards about how to open them, how to close them, what to look for, the signs coming through, the spirits, because certain spirits make certain signs on the board, quite demonic spirits trying to come through, make certain moves on the board. And I sort of went for a long time working it out, trying to watch, and I was watching people. I was asking people that use it all the time, and I did an online like a course studying about Ouija boards and their origin and why they were used, and how the Victorians used them in their Victorian tea parties to communication with spirit. And I really thought it's like anything. If I want to learn something, then I really dive in and get to the bottom of it. And ever since then, we use them quite often. Some of the venues here don't always allow you to use Ouija boards because they've had problems with other groups that have opened them and not shut them. And then, as we all know in the paranormal world, a Ouija board is another form of communication with spirit. So you need to have to open it, close it, make sure everybody's safe on the board, watch for the various signs. And if we're using a Ouija board, we don't always go on it. We stand back and watch and let the guests, let the guests use it, because if you go on it, there's always a chance that you could be influencing the board. So we tend to stand back and allow the guests to do it.
What else did you experience during your studies there?
So from the boiler house, we went to the clock tower, and this is probably about 150-foot high clock tower. You can see it from a long way away. And again, she didn't say much about it. She said, we'll go to the clock tower, but we'll go up like 5 stories, sort of up 5 stories in it virtually to the clock at the top. So as we were climbing up, imagine a square tower. So you're going up a stairs, around the room, and then up another flight of stairs. But the stairs were in the corner, so you'd go up through like a little hatch. So we were climbing up there, and we went up about 3 floors. And she said, right, just stand still a minute. And then we stood still. Somebody put the hatch down so nobody could fall down the stairs. And we were standing there, and she was calling out, is Jane Holloway here? Can you talk to us? Can you make an... And we could hear someone walking around up above us, like footsteps. Because when she was of sane of mind, Jane Holloway, she used to go to the clock tower to do some lessons and sing. And, that type of thing. And we could hear footsteps above us. So she said, right, we'll go up the next flight. Of course, we've gone up there, opened the hatch, gone to there. Obviously, there's no one there. Gone up to like the top, virtually to the clock. And it was then original. It was like a classroom, basically, a few desks and bits and pieces in there where she would teach them about etiquette, how to say yes, no, that type of thing. And according to her, a lot of people hear a woman singing in the tower, but nobody's been brave enough to go up there. So we've obviously been up there. The security have been up there because someone said if there's a woman singing in the tower, they've heard her, and they've been up there and not found anything. And even we couldn't find the footsteps, even when we went up. We were virtually at the top, really, and then we could hear footsteps below us. We opened the hatch and looked through the hatch to the next floor. Of course, there was no one there. So again, it's another part of your senses, hearing footsteps, but we couldn't see any trace of anybody there because as soon as we heard it, we opened the hatch and looked through the floor and there was nobody in the room, but we could clearly hear what sounded like someone walking around the room. Intriguing, really, really intriguing, really interesting. For a while, we did the investigation, and I sort of asked if I could go and talk to security, and so I just needed to know more. And I was talking to one of the security guards that does nights, and I said to him, have you seen anything on the CCTV? He said, no, we've not ever seen anything, but we've heard footsteps there. But two of our guys go there with radios, and they go up into the tower, and obviously no one's there, but you can hear the footsteps when they're radioing in. You can hear the footsteps above them. So they've gone all the way to the top and found nothing. And then he was telling me about an incident that happened, I can't remember, late 70s, early 80s there, where they were on the CCTV. And it had student accommodation there. And one of the guys on the night shift had gone for a walkabout because they have very precious paintings there that, money can't buy in a special room. And the other guy sitting in the control room was watching the students' floors when he saw a door open in number 8 room number 8, and the student run out and jump out the window. So they're 3 stories up. So he's radio's mate, someone's just jumped out the window, quick. So he's run out onto the grass. His mate's then gone from there straight up to room 8, but the door was shut. He knocked on the door and the student was fast asleep, but there was nobody outside. So they questioned his mate and said, well, what did you see? Why are you calling it in when there's nobody around? And he said, I'm telling you, I know what I saw. I saw someone run out of that room and straight out the window and gone. They said, well, there's nobody here. And the student in room 8 is fast asleep. So they went back and looked on the CCTV, but obviously they couldn't see anything on the TV other than the door open and the window open, but no one running. But they could see the window open and the door open. And so, he to this day, he knows he saw someone run out of the room. So prior to that, a year before that, they had a student there that they had done a bit of history checking, and sure enough, in room 8, a student had actually committed suicide, run out of the room and run out the window, and sadly plummeted to his death on the grass outside because it's like a courtyard. And they reckon that every now and again, it might be a year, might be 2 years between it, they actually see the same thing recorded again, a bit like a residual energy where it plays back. But they've never actually seen anybody, but they've seen the door open, the window open, and that's it. But they don't see the spirit go from one side to the other.
That is crazy. But it's amazing that the recording picks up the door and the window, and the individual sees the person or the spirit, but the recording doesn't pick that up.
But he's adamant. He saw the person run across the corridor, and obviously his mates are saying, no, well, you couldn't have done because there is nobody here. So, what have you just seen? He said, well, I know what I saw. I know what it's doing. And they're saying there's nobody out here, and the student in room 8's fast asleep. And that sort of intrigued him to go back and realise. And after a few checks and asking a few people around it, he found out that there was a student in that time, about a year or so prior, that committed suicide there.
Yeah, that's crazy. No, I believe, why else would that door open and why else would that window open? It completely falls in line with that experience from that student, which is very sad, but wow, what an incredible sighting for that guy.
Yeah, and he never forgets it, even saying it back to me when he was telling me about it. Obviously he has to be careful what he says because obviously it's all security. But he was quite emotional telling the story. It really obviously affected him what he'd seen because he literally thought someone had jumped.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, he witnessed that death. Yeah, that's definitely going to leave a mark, and that's something that that rattles you. That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. Yeah, and what else happened there?
That was about it for us. We never went back again as students, but that experience to me will last a lifetime, because that was my first real experience into the unknown, shall we say, the unexplained. Someone saw it but can't explain it. We heard taps, knocks, and the Ouija board gave us information. The walking in the tower, the tugging in the tunnels. We never went back again because we were allowed to do it the one time because they're quite security conscious there because they have a lot of foreign students there. They don't like people traipsing around the site, but we were with an organised group, so they were quite happy to do that because the group was organised by them. But that was sort of the last time we went there, which was, and then you had to put that in your write up at the end of the course and how you experienced and what you felt, and so it's really interesting place.
Oh, absolutely. What an incredible study. And I bet you had a great write up at the end of all that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Earlier, you mentioned when you were talking back about Nana, and you had said
Yeah.
The house wasn't haunted unlike the one that you're in now. What's going on in your home? I'd like to hear about that.
Oh, lots of things happen here with myself and my partner Jenny, who's obviously just sitting here with me alongside. So we have lots of things. We get smoke. We can smell smoke, and neither of us are smokers. So we pick it up sort of straight away. Can't see the smoke, but we smell it. And we're thinking to ourselves, we look at each other and go, smell the smoke. We're like, yeah, smell the smoke. And then we've had like the corner of your eye, heads poked round the front lounge door, in the corner of your eye, and you think, what was that? And a few things have happened, and then they've sort of built up. One day it was quite hot here, so we were sitting in the lounge watching a bit of TV. Had all the doors and windows open because it was a very hot time here. So we were sitting there and we heard this bang and like a whizzing type noise. I thought, what was that? So I went out we both got up and went, what was that? Went out into the kitchen, and in the middle of the kitchen was a lemonade bottle spinning round on its own. And we're like looking at each other going, well, where could that have come from? And it was literally spinning round. And like my partner Jenny said, maybe they were trying to warn us that we'd left the windows open in the kitchen. So I thought, oh yeah, I suppose, okay. So we went to bed a week later, Jen?
Something like that.
About a week later, we're fast asleep, about 2:00 in the morning. We heard this biggish crash, bang, smash, and all sorts of noises. And we both jumped up thinking someone has broken in.
What the hell?
We were like, what? So we both I jumped up and run out to see if someone had broken in, only to find the kitchen clock laying on the floor all smashed. But the hanger for the kitchen clock was still in the wall. I'm thinking, what? And I checked the time out. It's like about 20 past 2 in the morning, something like that, where the battery had come out. And I said, Jen, the battery, the glass everywhere, and the clock's all broken. But the hanger was still in the wall, and that clock had been up there for probably over a year. So quite how it could have come off the wall, we don't know. So anyway, we had a few things, knocks and taps. One day my partner Jenny was coming in. She'd been out shopping. So as she was coming in the front door, she could hear voices in the lounge. So she said, oh no, it's her daughter with the grandchildren, not realising that Jenny was coming in and going back out again. So she sort of opened the front door, came into the lounge, ready to say, oh, I've got to go back out, but there was nobody here. And she actually heard a conversation in the lounge of people talking. So we had bits like that. So it was carrying on a bit on and off, wasn't it, for a while? The picture flying in the lounge, in the hallway. So the picture in the lounge flew off about midnight one night and bounced down the hallway. And I got up and I said to Jenny, what was that? And found the picture in the hallway. So anyway, I've been I bought a new camera. I thought I'll try this new camera out because it records in infrared and ultraviolet. So I said, I'll try the camera out and see if we catch anything before I take it on a paranormal investigation. So we live out in the countryside, so there's no subway, underground, trains, buses, lorries, anything go past the house. So I put it up in front of the TV on a massive bookshelf. So the bookshelf was solid, so it didn't move or anything like that. And then I left it there, sort of made sure. It was just a rough guess looking at the lounge door and walked away, went to bed. Didn't really hear anything during the night. Jen thought she'd heard a few noises, but wasn't really sure because we often get knocks and taps during the night, but it doesn't bother us as we know that they're not here to harm us, and they're welcome to come in and out as they want, as long. So I got up in the morning, I looked at the camera, and it was flashing red like it had been triggered because it was movement and sound sensitive camera. So I said to Jen, the camera's been triggered, I'll have a look at it tonight when I get home. So I'd gone off to work, come back, thought, I must try that card. So I put it in my laptop and I was sitting there going backwards and forward. It recorded about 55 minutes of recording. And so, because 55 minutes to go back through a recording takes you probably 1 or 2 hours because you stop, go back. So it took me a while. And right in the middle of the recording, although it was quiet, but you could hear it like a static build up in the room. And I'm thinking, what is that noise? Because it's quiet all the way up to that point. And then you see the camera start to vibrate, shake, like an energy in the room. Well, that's really strange. And as I carried on watching the video, where our lounge door is, the video stops because the noise and the movement stops. And then it starts again. But this time the lounge door is a little bit further open. And as you look at it, it's on video, you can see it. When you look at it, you see a woman suddenly appear, like see-through, but you see her head come round the door and look, and a spirit child in the hallway. And then you see her actually disappear. She goes down, down, down. You hear dunk, dunk, and she disappears. And as you look at the camera, the orb comes in the room and disappears out of the room, but leaves the spirit child there. It's on our video. It's been on TV and other stuff like that. So I looked at it and said, Jen, come and have a look at this. What do you think this is? And we both sat there in amazement. So a very good friend of mine is a paranormal investigator on the TV in the UK. So I thought, I'm going to send it to him and see what he says. So I sent it to him and he came back to me after about 3 or 4 days going, where did you get this footage? I said, well, it's at home. I caught it on this camera. He said, can I send it to some people I know to have the footage verified that it's not fraudulent? I said, of course you can. It didn't matter to me, but he said, make sure you copyright it so nobody else can do it. So it's gone for probably 2 or 3 weeks. And he come back to me. He said, someone's going to ring you from a TV company. And I'm like, oh, okay then. Because they want to use it in a TV documentary. Because it's never seen before where an apparition or a spirit, actually you see them materialise, although you can see right through them, materialise, look round the door and then dematerialise and disappear. It's never ever been caught before. So anyway, he sent it off and the TV crew contacted us, could you do a program, blah, 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 all of that type of stuff. And then he came back to me, my friend, and he said, I sent it to the police because they want to have a look. He's got a friend in there that does forensics where they look at the metadata, which is the information within the film, the camera position, height, all the time going on. There's a time it's recorded, how it's recorded, where they can get all that from a picture. So he said, did you realise that the first part of the video is different to the second? I went, well, no, it's not. It's a continuation of the first part. He said, that's how it looks. But when they looked at it, they broke down the metadata. The first part of the video you see where the camera shakes, and then the camera stops, was filmed at 03:07. So 7 minutes past 3 in the early hours of the morning. When you see the apparition arrive and the spirit materialise, like where you can see through her and you can see the child spirit, was at 03:06. So time had gone back a minute from the original recording. And they said that they just don't know. They've never ever seen time go back by a minute. And it was first recording was at 03:07 a.m. in the early hours of the morning. The camera shakes, the vibration, the static stops. The door opens a bit more so you can actually see the apparition. You see as large as life, and then you see the child, and that was recorded 03:06. So at the time the camera stopped, it went back a minute. How'd you work that one out?
That is fascinating. I'm going to have to look up that video. That is absolutely incredible. Is there any explanation?
Definitely, I can send it over to you.
Yeah, I would love to see that. Is there any explanation for that minute that skips back, so to speak? Is there, technically speaking, is there any way that the clock or something on that camera could have done that? What do you make of that?
What the forensic guy said, what's intriguing and has baffled him, when the first recording at 03:07, the clock is still running forward, so the seconds are still going. When it goes to 03:06, the seconds are still going but carrying on from 3:07. So it was like something like 03:07, for argument's sake, 28 seconds, and it was 03:06, 29, 30, 31, 32, but it had gone back a minute, but the seconds were still running.
Yeah, that's a difficult one to explain.
Yeah.
What can you tell me about the house? About how old is it? What do you know the history of this house?
Vaguely, yeah. It was built in the 50s. It was built around the 50s here, and the lady that lived here before my partner moved in was a heavy smoker, smoked a lot, because we sort of spoke to the neighbours and said, oh, was she a heavy smoker? They said, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And the weirdest thing is, when my partner come to look over the bungalow, she walked in and we have a little dog, a little Maltese pup dog. It's white. And one of the neighbours come out and said, oh, what are you doing with Lily? She said, oh, no, it's not Lily. This is Poppy. She said, no, that's Lily, the dog that used to live there with the lady next door. She said, no, this is my dog, Poppy. And she said, well, that's strange because the lady lived in where you're going to have a look, had a dog exactly the same as Poppy, but it was called Lily. So with that, bearing that in mind, obviously my partner then moved in. And when we had the video, we showed the neighbours. We said, look at this. Do you see what we caught? Because obviously they knew we were into the paranormal because we would be coming back at all odd hours of the morning. So they knew we were either doing a train robbery or we were out doing the paranormal. But so we showed them the video and they said, oh, that was the lady that lived next door. That was the lady that lived in your house that looked round the door. And they identified her as the lady that lived here, who sadly died here. And obviously the smoke, she was a smoker. So the smoke we'd been smelling of obviously her coming back, and why shouldn't she come back to have a look around? It was where she lived. She had a good part of her life here. She had a good life here. So why shouldn't she come back and have a look? And that's what we reckon we caught in the video. Is they identified, said, that's her. That's the lady that used to live there.
She died in the home?
Correct, yes.
Wow. Yeah, and they basically identified her as that apparition then, correct? Yeah. I mean, it's clear enough that they were able to make it out to be her.
You can see her, yeah. If you zoom in, when the video plays, you can actually zoom in. You can actually see the hair and the eyes. But although she's transparent, you can see through her. But you can actually recognise her hair. As soon as we've zoomed in and said, do you know who that is? And they went, no, that's the lady that lived there. And they could actually see, although she was see-through, but...
Did you say there was another apparition in that same video you said? Was it a girl or something?
A child.
Was there any child associated with that woman?
She had a daughter, didn't she? Kim, isn't it?
Yeah, it could be my daughter.
It could be my partner's daughter, who sadly has a daughter in spirit, who's passed very young. So we wondered whether it was her that came back at the time. Maybe, we do sometimes think we have a portal in the hallway where spirit come in and out. Because, as being psychic mediums we are, sometimes we walk out and think, oh, it's cold. Like something's open. And we think maybe the lady that lived here came in and the child came in for Jenny to see her, because it's obviously Jenny's child in spirit, just to let her know that she's okay. And that's what we think we saw in the video. Obviously, the lady that lived here and the child was sadly the one Jenny lost very early on in life.
Yeah, I'm very sorry about that, Jenny. About how long after, I guess Jenny moved in first. Is that, if I understood you correct?
Correct, yes.
About how long after she moved in did anything begin to happen in that home?
Would you like her to tell you the story of what happened to her when she was here?
That'd be fantastic. Absolutely.
You're sitting right next to me. Hang on. And she'll explain what happened to her. Yeah. I'm just passing you over. Just bear with us.
So, basically, before I moved in, I kept saying to Spirit, come on, when am I going to move? Because it seemed to be some sort of hold up. And they said to me, someone's got to pass before you can move. So that was number one thing. Then I had a dream, and I'm saying to Spirit, come on, give me a sign when I'm supposed to move. So I had a dream about my gran, and she was showing me the keys, and she's saying when the time's right. So I thought, oh, okay. So not long after, obviously the lady had passed, and I kept seeing signs like Churchill. We live sort of not far from a memorial to Churchill, and then there's sort of Churchill homes and stuff like that, and the actual name of our road is Churchill Close. So I knew there was something going on, and then yeah, that's right, they showed me the actual bungalow, and I thought, yeah, I like this, I like the energy here, and it's a nice feeling. That's when I was I met the lady next door, and she said, what you doing with Lily? And I said, no, this is Poppy. And exactly the same dog, white and everything, exactly the same breed. And then I moved in, and you know what it's like when you just moved, you're really, really tired. And I remember sort of sitting in the lounge in the chair and falling asleep and thinking, what are all these people doing here? Because I kept feeling all spirit around me and like walking in and stuff. And then one night, going off to sleep, I remember seeing some guy with a young child. And I said, what are you doing here? And he said, well, I just came in to have a look. So, like, hence, it's what we feel this portal is about. You know, people seem to sort of come and go. Anyway, I said to this guy, no, I'm sorry, you must go. You have to be invited to come in here. So he said, oh, okay, and he left. And, you know, stuff kind of like happened thereafter, really.
That's a crazy coincidence. I mean, just about the dog, and for instance, something small like that.
No. Come on. There's no such thing as coincidence.
I guess that's what I'm trying to say, I guess.
Yeah. You know, I always say spirit have the plan. Absolutely they do. Yeah. I mean, it's like how Paul and I met, you know. We met at a paranormal investigation, and I was actually going to bring someone else, another guy. Oops, how dare I say that? But yeah, so I was going to bring someone else, and Spirit kept saying to me, kept whispering to me, no, don't. And so I thought, oh, okay. So then I'm putting makeup on to go to this venue with my friend, and they're saying, no, don't. I said, what, don't go? No, he doesn't like makeup. What? And that's absolutely true. And he likes sort of natural ladies, yeah? So then we met, and, you know, it was like, I don't know, like we've known each other for years.
That's awesome. What an awesome story there. I'm running short on time here, and I feel like we have much more to cover. So I'm going to have you back, if I could, for a part 2 next week, if you don't mind. we'll get you back on here and then we'll continue with the conversation. But I thank you for being here and we'll talk next week.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening. I appreciate you being here. If you have an account to share and would like to be on the show, email me at show@accountsoftheparanormal.com and tell me what you saw. You can catch this show wherever you listen to podcasts, as well as our website, accountsoftheparanormal.com, where you can access full episodes and links to all our socials and our YouTube channel, where you can listen and watch along with visual images. And if you're a fan of what you heard here, please like, share, follow, subscribe. I appreciate the support. I'll see you next time.